On my very first day back with my wealthy biological family, I shut everyone up. Just seconds ago, my parents were whispering about how my rural upbringing made me unpresentable. They were busy comforting their precious, heartbroken fake son, claiming they only brought me back for a marriage alliance, but the moment they laid eyes on me, their jaws dropped. They were utterly stunned. Could this striking, incredibly refined young man really be their biological son? I stopped by the dining table, looking down at the three of them with a calm, sweeping gaze. I am Lu Qingye, I said flatly. My biological parents finally snapped out of their daze, forgetting all their talk about how crude I would be. My biological mother stood up awkwardly, looking a bit nervous. Qingye, you must be exhausted after traveling all day. Sit, please, sit. Butler Feng, have the kitchen serve the food. The butler hurried off. I pulled out a chair opposite my mother and Shen Minghui. I sat down with absolute ease, showing zero awkwardness. Once the butler left, a tense silence filled the room. Finally, Father Shen cleared his throat and asked, "How was your journey here? Was everything smooth?" "It was fine," I replied. He then asked, "Are your university enrollment documents ready?" "They are," I said. Father Shen frowned. "I see you and Minghui both finished high school last summer. Why haven't you been studying since graduation?" I had actually been out of school for over a year. Meanwhile, Shen Minghui was already starting his sophomore year. But before I could even answer, he assumed he knew why. He figured my grades were just terrible. After all, I grew up in the mountains, so finishing high school was already a feat. "I had to donate an entire campus building to secure your spot at this university," Father Shen noted. "It wasn't cheap. If you struggle to keep up, just ask Minghui. I put you in the same major so you two could look out for each other." I gave a cool, brief nod. My indifferent attitude irritated Father Shen, who thought I was deliberately embarrassing him. But seeing my calm face, he figured I was just naturally quiet. He realized I wasn't being rebellious. I just seemed introverted and soft-spoken. Honestly, the Shens didn't know me at all. I was distant, but I politely answered every question, leaving them no room to complain. Soon the kitchen staff served the dishes, and a quiet hush fell over the dining room. While I enjoyed my meal with complete poise, everyone else seemed totally distracted. My biological mother, who had looked down on me just moments ago, felt a strange sense of pride as she stared at my refined face. "Qingye, I haven't introduced you yet. This is Minghui. He has a wonderful personality, and since you're about the same age, you can go to him for anything." She then turned to him. "Minghui, this is your second older brother. We're a family now, so you should call him brother." Minghui's gaze drifted from my dark hair down to my straight nose, scanning me thoroughly. He stared at my straight shoulders and my casual yet elegant posture, his eyes finally resting on my refined, noble face. Under the table, his fingers dug deep into his palms. "Brother," he murmured. Was this the power of bloodlines? I had grown up in a remote mountain village, yet I didn't have a single trace of vulgarity. Every inch of me exuded grace and nobility. My posture and bearing looked far more aristocratic than his, despite his years of elite training. Even in this lavish mansion, I didn't show a hint of awkwardness, behaving as though I belonged. It was as if I had lived in luxury my entire life. Is anyone really born with this level of innate class? Personally, I had no idea. I had merely walked a few steps and spoken a few words, yet Minghui's mind was racing. But I could tell he wasn't genuinely welcoming me. So I set my chopsticks down and said casually, "We're the same age, so no need for brother. Just call me Lu Qingye." Father Shen frowned instantly. "Why are you still using the Lu surname? I'll have someone change it tomorrow." I refused him outright. "Lu is perfectly fine, no need to change it." Mother Shen immediately objected. "You're back with us now. As our youngest son, how can you keep the name Lu?" I simply replied, "I have no spiritual tie to the Shen name." Hearing this, everyone's expressions hardened. Minghui and I were swapped at birth, and I had been raised by a lone elder. Having grown up without parents, my claim that I shared no affinity with the Shen name sounded like a direct jab at my biological parents' years of neglect. Minghui bit his lip, looking deeply hurt. "Brother, are you saying all of this is my fault?" I raised an eyebrow in genuine amusement. Why would you think that my lack of connection to the Shens wasn't because of some baby mix-up? It was a matter of spiritual destiny and destiny alignments. A mere mortal like Minghui couldn't possibly sway something that grand. So I answered honestly, "You're overthinking it. You don't have that kind of influence." But Minghui took it as a massive insult, his eyes instantly welling with tears. "Brother, I know you don't like me, but how could you say that to me?" I stared at him baffled. What did I even say? I'm just stating facts. I scanned his face once more, noting his features. "Your forehead is broad, showing early wealth, but born in late autumn with a flat brow bone, your luck won't last. If you weren't living in a water-aligned estate like imperial scenery, your fortune would have collapsed. Your own energy is already so weak you couldn't possibly affect mine. Minghui didn't understand a single word of metaphysics, but he definitely caught the part where I said his wealth wouldn't last. He immediately turned to Father Shen. Father, do you hear what brother is saying? My lifestyle is all thanks to our family. Saying my wealth won't last, isn't he cursing our family? Sure enough, Father Shen glared at me with deep displeasure. Stop playing these childish mind games. He knew fortune-telling masters existed, but those were always respected elders in their 50s or 60s. I was barely of age. What could I possibly know? Mother Shen was an atheist who dismissed anything spiritual. In her eyes, I had just picked up some bizarre nonsense in the countryside to deliberately mock people. With that thought, her newfound appreciation for my elegant looks and refined aura instantly evaporated. I leaned back against the cushions, utterly amused. I folded my arms and leaned back. Back in the day, countless wealthy elites begged me for a single reading or calligraphy piece, never even getting a meeting. Now I was giving free advice out of pure generosity. Yet they brushed it off. I couldn't help but recall my conversations with Elder Lu back in the Southwest. He used to tell me that people are foolish, only wanting to hear pleasant lies while rejecting harsh truths. Back then I was arrogant, boasting that my sheer power would force anyone to listen. Elder Lu had simply laughed and shaken his head, warning me that I hadn't truly experienced the real world or human nature. Seeing them now, I realized he was absolutely right. Unsolicited advice is worthless. Since they refused to believe me, I wasn't going to waste my breath. I'm finished. Please take your time, I said. I set down my chopsticks, took a sip of warm water, and stood up. Do you mind if I excuse myself? Mother Shen nodded. Go ahead and get some rest. Tomorrow, our driver Xiaoli will take you and Minghui to school. Understood, I replied. I called the butler over to show me to my room. The Shen family villa had 6 floors, including the basement. My biological parents lived on the 3rd floor and Minghui was on the 4th. Yet the butler had assigned me a room on the 5th floor. I stood by the quiet window of my bedroom. Looking down, I had a perfect view of the entire garden under the soft silver moonlight. The pale glow bathed my silhouette, making my side profile look distant and mysterious. The butler stood frozen, a sudden wave of unease washing over him. He felt as though this newly returned young master was completely unfathomable. But how could that be? Wasn't I only 19? If you don't like the room, I can arrange another one. It's fine. I'll stay here for now, I replied. The butler wondered what I meant by for now, but kept quiet. Finding no further tasks, he bowed and left. Once alone, I looked up at the towering moon outside my fingers, moving in a swift, practiced pattern. Any expert in the mystic arts would have instantly recognized my hand movements as a complex divination gesture. Ever since I arrived in this world, I performed this calculation daily. Yet day after day, the reading returned the exact same outcome. Letting my hand fall, I sighed quietly. Still absolutely no change today. The next morning, the butler checked on the breakfast preparation and decided to head upstairs to wake me up. The household staff and family members kept strict schedules on weekdays, but since this was my very first day, the butler worried I might oversleep. However, before he could even reach the elevator, he saw me strolling in from outside with light, effortless steps. He gasped in surprise. Young master, when did you go out? I woke up exceptionally early, but I didn't see you leave the house at all. I paused to think. I didn't check the time, but it was just as dawn was breaking. That meant around 5 a.m. Since the butler had also just woken up then, he assumed he must have missed me. He found it slightly odd, but didn't press. He had no idea I hadn't used the front door at all. Instead, I had leaped straight down from the 5th floor into the garden, then scaled the high boundary wall to slip out. I found the villa's layout far too tedious. Needing elevators just to change floors and dealing with security gates felt entirely unnecessary. If I hadn't spotted the gardener trimming the hedges on my way back, I would have scaled the wall to get back inside. I returned to my room, took a quick shower, changed, and gathered my school documents. When I walked downstairs, my biological parents and Minghui were already seated in the dining room. We exchanged polite greetings as I took a seat. As we ate, Father Shen addressed me. Your mother and I wanted to drop you off personally, but we have an urgent board meeting today, and she needs to accompany me. Minghui has been at the university for a year now and knows his way around. Let him guide you. Understood, I replied after setting my glass down. Father Shen continued, since you haven't opened a book in over a year, you'll definitely struggle. Even though I paid for your admission, you can't fail your courses. If you truly find it too difficult to keep up, just let us know and we'll hire private tutors. I found this highly amusing. This was already the second time he assumed I would struggle with university coursework. Despite their seemingly caring parental acts, they hadn't bothered to do any basic research on my actual background. If they had bothered to look at my academic record or the national competition awards I won over the last 2 years, they wouldn't be lecturing me. But I didn't correct them. I simply nodded, playing the part of an obedient, respectful son. Once Father Shen finished speaking, I resumed eating. Father Shen missed these subtle details entirely. Minghui was also too preoccupied with the fact that we had to travel to school together to notice anything. Only Mother Shen kept her gaze fixed on me, her eyes filled with a complicated mix of emotions. After breakfast, our driver readied the car. Once we departed, Mother Shen turned to her husband hesitantly. "Don't you think he's extremely what handsome Father Shen interrupted. He is our biological son after all. He definitely inherited our best features. Minghui doesn't quite match him there." "No," she sighed, giving him a look. "I'm not talking about his looks. I mean his mannerisms, his presence. Don't you feel something is off misunderstanding her father?" Shen laughed. "What could be off? Before he arrived, I worried he'd be unrefined, but he seems exceptionally polite." Mid-sentence, Father Shen suddenly froze. Meeting his wife's intense gaze, realization dawned on him. "Wait, is it because he's too perfect, like completely flawless, Mother?" Shen sighed. "Neither of you paid attention during breakfast. His dining etiquette is actually far more elegant and refined than anyone in our own household. Whenever we spoke to him, he would chew swallow, set his utensils down, and only then reply. He wouldn't touch his food again until the conversation paused." Father Shen racked his brain. "It was true. Our family doesn't even practice such strict dining rules," Mother Shen continued. "And think about how he holds his chopsticks. His posture, his stride, his speech. Everything is incredibly deliberate." Father Shen fell silent, deeply, contemplating her words. "Now that you mention it, his presence is indeed unique. I originally assumed he was just so remarkably handsome that everything he did looked appealing. But on second thought, you're right. He is outstanding." Mother Shen hesitated. "I thought growing up outside made him a wild kid who would fail at everything. But seeing him now, isn't it a waste to have him take Minghui's place and marry into the Ye family?" Father Shen frowned. "What nonsense," he snapped. "How is he replacing Minghui? Minghui isn't even our biological son. The childhood marriage my father arranged was for his actual grandson. This engagement belongs to Qingyan. The mix-up only happened because they were swapped at birth." Still, Mother Shen worried. "But look at the Ye family. With their third daughter's condition, Qingyan might face an immediate divorce. Finding a good match after that will be nearly impossible. He is so remarkable. Wasting him on them seems like a shame." Honestly, though I was only 19, my striking looks were already undeniable. If I was this handsome, now my looks in adulthood would be breathtaking. Father Shen tapped the table, also reluctant to waste someone with such incredible potential. "But Minghui cannot marry the third Monsieur, Father." Shen muttered. "You know he and Ye Ruyan are deeply in love. Now that the third Miss is out of the picture, Ye Ruyan is the most promising successor to lead the Ye family." Minghui was smart to secure that connection early. Mother Shen understood his point, but sighed. "If only the third Miss were healthy, our biological son could marry her and we would soar to the top. Now that she is dying, marrying her serves us no purpose." Father Shen patted her hand. "If she hadn't suffered that accident, our family wouldn't stand a chance. We could never normally dream of marrying the head of the #1 household. Besides, Minghui's academic record is embarrassing. We had to buy his way into university. He remained deeply disappointed by that." Mother Shen nodded in agreement. "We must keep our focus on Minghui. If he marries Ye Ruyan, our family's future is secure." He gently brushed a stray hair from her forehead. "I leave the household matters to you, my dear." She playfully tapped his chest. "No need to be polite." By then, Shen Minghui and I had reached the school entrance. The moment we stepped out of the car, we turned heads. Several girls kept looking back at me, whispering, "Wow, does he actually go to our school?" I know every good-looking guy here, and I definitely would have remembered him. He is totally campus heartthrob level. I ignored the stares and compliments, utterly unfazed. But Shen Minghui looked sour. Usually he was the one everyone stared at. Standing beside me now, he was completely invisible. Remembering what he had bragged to his friends, he froze, forcing a tight smile. "Qingyan, I just remembered I have to meet some friends. Go ahead and register at the academic office yourself." My eyes swept over his face. "No problem, I can manage. But I should warn you, your luck today looks terrible." His smile froze. Assuming I was just playing mind games, he stormed off, muttering inwardly about my bizarre behavior. What a freak, always spouting superstitious nonsense. Did he honestly think his weird warnings would scare anyone pathetic? But rushing up the stairs, Minghui wasn't watching. Rounding a corner, he collided head-on with someone carrying a massive stack of test papers. He scrambled backward to avoid the flying sheets, but his lower back slammed hard against the handrail. A sharp pain shot through him. "Hey, watch where you're going." The other students snapped, scrambling to gather the pages. Professor Zhang needs these right now. Minghui opened his mouth to snap back, but stopped. The girl was a notorious wealthy brat on campus. Swallowing his anger, he muttered, "Sorry, I was rushing." She rolled eyes. "Wear glasses next time." Clutching his throbbing back, he limped toward his classroom. He sighed in relief, finding his friends hadn't arrived yet. Before I returned to the Shen family, he had whined to them about his fears of being mocked once the real heir showed up. His friends assured him it wouldn't happen, and Li Hao even laughed at him. "Minghui, you're overthinking things. Bloodlines mean nothing these days, so what if he is the real heir? Is he as handsome or elegant as you? Does he have your social connections? Don't scare yourself. Even if he returns, he'll just be a nobody. A master in name only. You're the actual high society prince." Before meeting me, Shen Minghui believed that too, but once we met, he panicked. He realized my looks and demeanor were flawless, completely outshining him. If we ever walked together, the contrast would be devastating. People would assume I was the one raised in luxury while he was the imposter. He had already told his friends I was registering today. When they offered to humiliate me on his behalf, he feigned hesitation but was secretly thrilled. Now, however, he regretted it. He dreaded the thought of them seeing me. Though they would eventually find out, he wanted to delay that moment as long as possible. Unfortunately for him, just as I had warned, his luck was terrible today. Someone called out to him near the building. "Excuse me, classmate." She turned around and found herself staring into a pair of mesmerizing eyes. "Do you know where the academic affairs office is?" Li Hao froze her mind completely blank. Seeing her stare in silence, I felt puzzled. "Classmate, hello." It took several tries to get her attention. Blushing furiously, she quickly looked away. "Sorry, I zoned out. What did you ask?" She was mortified. Staring blankly at a guy like a lovesick fool was the ultimate social death for a girl. I calmly repeated my question. "I was asking for directions to the academic office." She quickly pointed ahead. "The white building over there, 3rd floor. Turn right out of the elevator. There is a sign. Thanks," I said, turning to leave when she stopped me. "Which department are you in?" Someone this stunning should be famous on campus. I told her I was registering today. Realizing some freshmen arrived late, her eyes lit up as she offered her hand. "Then I'm your senior." What a coincidence meeting you today. "My name is Li Hao, a finance sophomore. We are in room 506. Drop by whenever you are free." I smiled and shook her hand. "Hi, I'm Lu Qingye. Thanks for being so welcoming. Meeting like this is fate, so let me give you a free warning. Tell your brother to avoid bridges tomorrow." She froze. "What? Why mention her brother? How did I even know she had one?" Before she could ask, I waved and walked away. Baffled, she returned to the classroom. She noticed a crowd gathered around Shen Minghui. Sitting down to listen, she heard them discussing his newly returned brother. They were complaining about why he got to be the eldest son. Based on arrival, you should be the eldest, someone argued. Others agreed. He's only been back a day and they're already playing favorites, making you call him older brother. Minghui lowered his head, whispering, "No, they just want to make it up to him." In reality, he knew the arrangement was for next year's wedding. They wanted him to take the fall and marry the dying Ye girl instead, but he couldn't reveal that. His friends grew more indignant. "If you let him step on you today, you'll be giving up your entire inheritance tomorrow," someone warned. "You're the one who grew up in the Shen household. At the very least, you two are equals. You can't let him walk all over you." Another friend scoffed. "Please, a country bumpkin can't compare to Minghui. He probably doesn't even know how to order a steak. He probably has no manners at all." A girl in pigtails leaned in. "Did you see him yesterday? Is he totally hideous? Does he have sunburned cheeks from living in the mountains? Is he some giant muscular thug, and isn't he a total academic failure? They had to buy a building just to get him in. We are sophomores and he is still a freshman." Minghui forced a weak smile. "I saw him. Don't say that." They took his defense as pitying confirmation and snickered. Hearing this, Li Hao frowned. "Why are we talking about the future?" she interrupted. "Didn't we plan to check him out today? Why are we still sitting here since she had the wealthiest background? They always followed her lead." "Right, let's go before class starts," someone chimed in. "Don't. It feels like we're going to bully him. He's my brother after all." "What brother?" Someone grabbed his arm. "Come on, tell us his major in class. We'll just take a look, not actually hurt him." The girls giggled. "Yeah, we'll just talk about parties, designer clothes, and luxury cars. Oh, did you wear that 6 million yuan watch? Let that poor kid see what real wealth looks like." Minghui was tempted. No matter how incredibly handsome and elegant I was still a country bumpkin. Had I ever seen a sports car worn designer brands or owned a luxury watch? He figured I'd be utterly shocked once I learned what they cost, but remembering my face, he hesitated and decided against it. Right now, his friends expected a monster. If they saw me now, they would be absolutely stunned. Minghui knew how much looks mattered. When someone's appearance is vastly superior to the average person, society is always far more forgiving. It was better to give it a few days to prepare them. He wanted to spread rumors first, making everyone believe I was just a brainless beauty. That way my appearance wouldn't threaten him. He pointed at the classroom clock with a sigh. Class is starting. Our first period is calculus and the professor is Professor Mei. Are you sure you want to skip? Since their calculus teacher was notorious for failing students, the group hesitated. They decided to call off the search and stay for the lecture. Meanwhile, I successfully completed my registration and collected my things. I got my textbooks, uniform, and student ID. Then the counselor personally escorted me to the classroom. The noisy room fell dead silent the moment I stepped inside. Dozens of eyes locked onto me. A girl in the back let out an audible gasp. Amused, I flashed a soft smile, sending a wave of giggles through the room. The counselor sighed. Class is starting. Open your books. What is your first period, Western economics? Someone called out. Seeing the teacher hadn't arrived, the counselor cleared his throat. Before we begin, let me introduce a student who registered late, Lu Qingye. The counselor gestured to me. Please introduce yourself. I wrote my name on the blackboard, scanning the room. My gaze paused briefly on a boy sitting in the third row from the back. I quickly looked away. Hello, everyone. I'm Lu Qingye. The classroom erupted in warm applause. The counselor, a literature scholar, stared appreciatively at the blackboard. Look at this handwriting. Elegant and balanced, yet each stroke carries immense character and strength. He seemed completely lost in admiration. After I finished my introduction, he stared blankly until I cleared my throat. Is that all you're going to say? He asked. I smiled. Saying too much is pointless. We will get to know each other over time. Time will tell us everything. The counselor checked his watch. All right, pick any open seat. Your economics professor should be here momentarily. If you run into any issues, my office door is always open. I politely thanked him and walked down the aisle. Thank you, counselor. I understand. Before leaving, he turned back to look at the blackboard, praising my handwriting. You must join the next school competition, he insisted. I simply smiled and nodded, letting him know I heard him and would be there. The classroom instantly erupted like water hitting a hot pan. College lecture halls are huge with tons of empty seats, but I walked straight to the third row from the back. Tapping on the desk, I asked, Excuse me, is anyone sitting here? Zhao Zichen froze. He clearly didn't expect a guy like me to walk straight toward him. Sitting alone by the window, he assumed I wanted his spot and scrambled up. Do you want the window seat? I can move. I gently pressed his shoulder, effortlessly pushing him back down. No need. I will just sit right here next to you. The moment I walked in, I noticed dark purple energy swirling around him. A purple aura is incredibly rare, but this dark mist was not originating from his own soul. It looked like a residue rubbed off from spending a long time around someone else and accidentally rubbing off on him. Across all my lifetimes, I have rarely seen anyone carrying a purple aura. For it to be thick enough to stain another person is exceptionally rare. Worse, this aura was tainted, meaning whoever it belonged to must be in grave danger. As I thoughtfully studied Zhao Zichen, I whispered, Is someone in your family facing a disaster? Zhao Zichen's eyes widened. What did you say? He blurted out, completely shaken. He could not believe this incredibly handsome stranger was asking about a family tragedy the very second we met. Had his connection to his cousin been exposed? Impossible. He had kept it a secret for years, so how could a new student suddenly know? Zhao Zichen frantically searched the campus forum on his phone. Seeing no mention of himself, he let out a long sigh of relief. Only then did he look at me and deny it. No, of course not. He hesitated, then asked, Where did you hear that? Did you get the wrong guy? I glanced at him sideways, speaking calmly. Lying to me is useless. Then I effortlessly laid out his entire past. You were born wealthy, your parents love each other, and you had an older brother who died young. You were fragile, and falling into water at 6 was a major crisis in your life. You survived but stayed weak. At 9, you moved to a new city where you met a benefactor who changed your fate, which finally shifted. This benefactor you met must be a relative. Zhao Zichen listened, completely dumbfounded. Realizing I was about to expose every detail, he quickly begged for mercy. Oh, please stop. If you keep going, my entire family background will be laid bare. I stopped granting his wish, and did not go on. With a half smile, I said, Do not lie to me. You are completely transparent here. Zhao Zichen leaned in slightly and whispered, How do you know all this? Is your family part of some secret intelligence agency or spy organization that can easily look up people? I replied calmly, no, I do not need to look you up. I read fates. Zhao Zichen asked blankly, what does reading fates mean? I paused, thinking for a moment. In modern terms, you would call it metaphysics. He gasped in disbelief, stammering, metaphysics? But aren't metaphysics masters usually all white-haired? Are you actually hundreds of years old? I did not bother arguing with him. Who says a metaphysics master has to be old? Every field has geniuses whose single day of effort is worth decades of others' hard work. Have you never met someone like that? Zhao Zichen admitted he had indeed met geniuses before, but only in math physics or business, never in metaphysics. Still, I did not look like I was lying, and everything I said about his childhood was completely accurate. So, are you saying, he asked, trying to clarify my point, you are the type whose single day of progress is worth decades for anyone else? He expected me to agree, but I laughed, wagging a finger. No, a single day of my effort is worth hundreds of years of others. Hearing this, Zhao Zichen grew skeptical, feeling that this metaphysics master did not seem very reliable at all. He wanted to ask more, but our Western economics professor walked in, forcing him to open his textbook. Still, my words made him incredibly restless. In truth, he did not really believe in metaphysics, because ever since his cousin fell ill and doctors gave up, her family had hired numerous so-called masters. Some claimed to be enlightened monks, others said they were disciples of immortals, and some showed off certificates from various spiritual associations the moment they walked in. They set up altars, summoned spirits, burned bundles of incense, and went through stacks of paper talismans. Yet none of them could save his cousin. If he had held any hope for these mystical remedies in the beginning, by now that hope had long since died. Yet, as Zhao Zichen listened to the professor, he stole a glance at me. No one had ever done what I did, exposing so much at first sight. Even though I looked far too young and way too handsome, he had to admit my words carried immense weight and credibility. Hesitating, he pulled out his phone, opened his social media QR code, and slid it toward me. Can we add each other and chat online? He whispered. I sent a friend request and he accepted instantly. Sending an emoji to start, he typed, you asked if someone in my family met with disaster. Did you divine that? If so, can you tell who it is? From the corner of his eye, he watched my fingers pause. A moment later, he received my reply. Within 5 degrees of relation, likely a cousin. Looking at your face, she is female, a cousin. Stunned. Zhao Zichen typed back quickly. Since you know she is in trouble, do you know how to fix it? I replied, I need to see her. Zhao Zichen hesitated. After a long pause, he replied, I cannot make this decision. I must ask my elders. I did not reply. He thought about it and texted again. You got one thing wrong, though. I have never heard of having an older brother. This time, my reply was instant. I am never wrong. Go ask your parents. He thought I was being incredibly arrogant, refusing to admit an obvious mistake. How could an outsider know more than his parents' own son? Feeling a strong spark of defiance, Zhao Zichen switched to his chat with his mother. Typing into the screen, he asked, Is it true I had an older brother who died young? He planned to screenshot her denial to prove me wrong. Instead, after a long wait, she replied, How do you know? Zhao Zichen nearly jumped out of his seat, choking as he gasped. He began coughing violently. On the podium, the professor looked over with concern. Are you all right? If you are sick, you can go to the clinic. Zhao Zichen quickly apologized. I am fine, just a slight cold. Sorry for interrupting. Once the professor turned back, gaze drifted away, he typed back, A metaphysics master told me. I did not believe it at first. The screen showed his mother was typing. He waited anxiously, fearing she would dismiss it as nonsense, but then she messaged, Call me when you are free. Knowing his mother had something crucial to say, he rushed out the moment class ended. Finding a quiet spot, he dialed her number. The second she answered, she asked, What did the master say? Zhao Zichen repeated everything I had told him word for word. He asked if someone was facing a disaster. When I denied it, he accused me of lying and exposed my childhood. He knew I was weak and fell in the water at 6. He knew about Dad's job change at 9, moving us from Huaizhou to the capital, and how my health improved. But then he said, I had an older brother who died young. His mother sighed heavily. It is true. No one knows this besides your father and me. I cannot believe someone saw it. He wanted to ask what happened to the child, but hearing her melancholy voice, he knew she had never truly recovered. Wisely, he did not pry and change the subject. You and Dad always said my health improved because we changed cities, but if what he says is true, it was actually because I met a benefactor. Is that benefactor my cousin Mom? He seems incredibly capable. Why do we not let him see her? His mother hesitated. You know her situation is delicate. Let me ask your uncle first. If he agrees, you can invite the master over this weekend." Zhao Zichen knew that anything involving his cousin's family required absolute caution, so he nodded. "Let us decide then." When he returned to his seat in the classroom, I already knew what he had done. I glanced at him and asked, "So did you confirm who was right?" "Yes," Zhao Zichen smiled sheepishly. "I was wrong. I had just never heard my mother mention it before." I replied indifferently, "I told you, you are completely transparent to me." Hearing me say this again, he looked flustered, staring at me with a strange expression, wanting to speak. I said, "If you have something to ask, just ask." "Why are you acting like this?" He cleared his throat, embarrassed. "You said I am transparent. Does that mean you can see absolutely everything?" I replied flatly. "Of course. Your past, future, romance, and fortunes are all clear to me." Zhao Zichen's voice dropped his face, flushing. "Do you see me with clothes on or without them?" I was completely speechless. "Zhao Zichen, I have the heavenly eye, not X-ray vision." I was both amused and annoyed by his wild imagination. What on earth was he thinking? "What kind of nonsense do you fill your head with all day?" He smiled sheepishly. I just had a sudden thought. I do not know what possessed me to ask that. Thinking about it now, he was too embarrassed for words. Fortunately, I had no intention of holding it against him. The second class was about to start. Zhao Zichen hurriedly searched for his textbook, pretending nothing had happened. After the second class, there was a long break to allow students to change classrooms. Besides our core major courses, the university also required general education requirements and electives. General requirements were usually scheduled during the last 2 periods of the morning or afternoon. Zhao Zichen wanted to ask which classes I had selected, but still feeling too embarrassed about his earlier foolishness, he suddenly heard a female voice at the door asking, "Are there any newly registered freshmen in your class?" And a classmate packing books in the front row replied, "Yes, why?" 4 girls at the door whispered, "Found him, he is in this class." A short-haired girl said, "Call him out. We have business with him." Then someone shouted, "Hey, handsome new transfer student, someone is looking for you." Zhao Zichen looked puzzled. "Is today not your first day? Why is someone looking for you? Do you know anyone here?" I merely smiled. Maybe. I set my things down and walked out. Who is looking for me? Then I saw the girl who had asked me for directions this morning. I looked at her, Li Hao. She smiled with pleasant surprise. "You actually remember my name?" Seeing that we were about to chat, someone next to her quickly interrupted. "Wait, are you the freshman who just registered today?" I replied, "Yes." The girl stared at me, whispering, "We must have the wrong guy. This does not look like him. He is far too handsome. I wonder whose family he belongs to." "How, Jay, do you know him?" Even though they had checked every class and only ours had a new student, they still doubted. Actually not have come today. They had come entirely behind Shen Minghui's back and knew my name, but my appearance and aura were too extraordinary to match that poor kid from the mountains. The short-haired girl asked tentatively, "Do you know Shen Minghui?" Hearing this, I raised an eyebrow. If living in the same house counts as knowing him, then I suppose I do. The 4 girls froze, realizing my meaning a second later. "So you are the switched young master of the Shen family." I replied indifferently, "Do not call me that. I do not like it. My name is Lu Qingye. Yesterday, at the Shen house, I made it clear that we have no connection. Didn't Shen Minghui tell you?" My coldness toward them was obvious. Just mentioning them made my face go blank, making me seem too aloof for anyone to approach. They originally wanted to show off their wealth and mock the newly returned Shen heir. Instead, my aura and attitude completely crushed them. They just stared at each other, speechless. I lazily asked, "Is that all?" "No matter, I have to head to my next class." A short-haired girl summoned her courage and stepped forward. "If you have no connection with them, why did you return?" That was what they all wondered. If I hated the Shen so much, why go back? A strange expression crossed my face. "That is a good question." Standing at the classroom door, with the autumn sun bathing me, my eyes became unreadable. In that moment, all 4 girls looked at me as if I were shrouded in a mysterious glow. My gaze passed through them, looking towards something far more massive and immovable. I let out a soft laugh. Naturally, because of a polite debt I must return, I looked back at Zhao Zichen, who was peeking from the back row, and smiled. Right now, I really want to find a better way. Just then, an impatient-looking girl walked out of the classroom, cracking her knuckles at Li Hao and his group. "Why are you blocking our door?" "Looking for a fight." The way they surrounded me did look like a typical group bullying session. Violent activity. This girl was Qin Zhenzhen, a well-known school rebel. Rumor had it she even fought a drill sergeant during military training. Although Li Hao and the others were a year older, they did not want trouble and backed away. I kindly explained that they were just asking me some questions for Shen Minghui, that sophomore student council guy. Qin Zhenzhen frowned. He bumped into me this morning. So annoying. What is your deal with him? A grudge. Did you steal his girl? I laughed. I have no interest in his girl. We have some history. Basically, we were swapped at birth, and I was just brought back home. Hearing this, Qin Zhenzhen gasped. You are the real young master from that real and fake Heir rumor everyone is talking about. I asked, curious, am I that famous? She replied, are you kidding? You are incredibly famous, a real-life prince and pauper swap that boosted DNA testing across private hospitals. It is a good thing the Shens do not have a daughter, or they would cast you as a melodrama lead. Come on, what is your next class? Let us walk. She was highly entertaining. I followed her toward the classroom, but after a few steps, I remembered something and turned back to Li Hao. Oh, do not forget what I told you this morning. If it comes true, remember to send some extra cash. Then I walked inside with her. Ignoring their reactions, the three people next to Li Hao were completely baffled. Brother Hao, what did he tell you this morning? If I had not reminded him, Li Hao would have forgotten, he said uncertainly. This morning he told me to warn my brother about going out tomorrow and to avoid bridges. Does he know your brother? Why does he sound so mystical, Brother Hao? Are you going to tell him? Honestly, he is different from what we expected. And Minghui, why did he not warn us? He made us look like fools. Actually, their relationship with him was not even that close. They were just fair-weather friends who came to find me partly for Shen Minghui and partly out of boredom to watch the drama. Since they lost face in front of me, they blamed it all on him. Li Hao knew exactly what they were thinking and stayed out of it. Their discussion. Holding his phone, he thought of my expression earlier and finally sent a message to his brother Li Zi telling him to avoid bridges tomorrow. Li Zi must have been busy, only replying with a question mark near noon. Are you reading horoscopes again? That again was very smug, showing Li Hao had been teased many times before. Annoyed, Li Hao furiously typed back, no, this time a master told me he did not care if I was right or wrong. He just wanted to save face and establish me as a mysterious expert, proving that what he said came from a very mysterious master who knew everything instantly. Anyway, just listen to me this time. Well, he was not wrong. As a freshman whom nobody knew, was I not mysterious? The brothers were used to bickering, so Li Si instinctively replied, a master. Did he know you like horoscopes just to sell you cheap beads? Li Hao was almost in tears. Why did he always bring up the most embarrassing things? Someone please take this brother away. After morning classes, Shen Minghui tried to invite his friends out for lunch together, but his friends all had cold faces saying they had other plans. They were clearly venting their frustration. Shen Minghui stood there, blankly not understanding what he did wrong. At noon, the crowd was bustling, and someone rushing to the cafeteria dropped a pen from their pocket. Shen Minghui could not dodge in time, and a dark ink streak marked his clothes. He wanted to call the person back, but they did not even turn around and disappeared into the distance. Gnashing his teeth, he just grabbed a quick bite, and spent the afternoon classes feeling miserable. In the evening, the driver parked the car and went for a smoke. When Shen Minghui opened the door, he realized I was already sitting in the back. While others looked exhausted after a full day of classes, I remained effortlessly sharp, without even a single hair out of place. When he got in, I glanced at him, said nothing, and turned back to my phone. But Shen Minghui was already in a terrible mood, and my look made him feel utterly pathetic and messy. Suddenly he lost it, throwing his bag into the car. What is that supposed to mean? I looked down at the designer bag, rolling to my feet, and calmly asked, what is wrong with you? Shen Minghui pulled at his shirt, his face dark. Did you not see the stains? Laugh if you want. Stop mocking me in your head, you pretentious hypocrite. His aching lower back, his sudden cold friends, his stained clothes, thinking about everything that happened today, made him shake with rage. I know you have hated me since yesterday when you came back. You think I took your place and stole your life. You act like you do not care, but you secretly despise me. Seeing him spiral, I held my palm out to stop him. None of that is true. Do not let your imagination run wild. My indifferent attitude only infuriated him more. He blurted out, if you do not care, why did you come back? Aren't you just after the Shen family wealth? Wealth, I could not help but chuckle. What wealth do they have? If I wanted that, I could have as much as I want. I stared at Shen Minghui. Though my demeanor was calm, it exerted a heavy, penetrating pressure on him. I have my own reasons for returning, but hearing you, it sounds like you think of their wealth as dirt. Yet you knew you were not their son, yet you stayed anyway. Just as he was about to argue that our parents could not bear to let him go, I continued. Yesterday, when I returned, no one even had the decency to welcome me at the door. I suppose someone kept them busy. And this morning, 4 girls cornered me. They did not get any advantage, but they came with ill intent. Who pulled their strings? Shen Minghui, you have too many petty tricks. I am in a good mood, so I will let it slide. But you should stop. I looked down at him. Otherwise, you will not want to find out the consequences of crossing me. Besides, I believe I warned you this morning that your luck would be bad today. I looked away, picked up my phone, and said casually, do not be so arrogant. Take my advice next time. Shen Minghui went cold. He remembered that this morning I indeed told him his fortune was not good. At the time he thought I was just talking trash, but now connecting the dots of his miserable day, he could not help but feel a chill. The driver came back from his smoke break and saw Shen Minghui standing outside the car, actually shivering. He asked, young master, it is getting cold. Please get in, do not catch a cold. He almost called him the young master like before, but he realized the young master had changed and quickly stopped himself. He glanced inside the car, and seeing that I did not react, he breathed a sigh of relief. Somehow, this newly returned young master exerted quite a lot of pressure. Meanwhile, on Zhao's mother's side, after hanging up on Zhao Zichen, she rushed to the Ye family home. Her name was Ye Huili, the youngest daughter of the family. She had an older brother who used to run things, but a few years ago, his wife, and their second son died in an airplane crash. Her eldest nephew was in the military, so the family business had to be handed over to her third niece, Ye Wangqing, who was still a minor then. Despite her youth, Ye Wangqing was a business genius. In just 6 months, she completely took over the enterprises, expanding the Ye empire significantly over the years. Originally, people called her Third Miss Ye, but recently everyone referred to her as Third Sister Ye. Back then, Ye Huili's husband often marveled that whenever people outside knew he was Third Sister Ye's uncle, they would accommodate him. He would praise that with such a daughter, the Yi family would thrive, but perhaps heaven was jealous or the Ye family was plagued by misfortune. Last spring, Ye Wangqing suddenly collapsed. Though she quickly woke up, her body grew weaker, day by day. Renowned doctors and experts from home and abroad could not find any specific issue. Ye Wangqing held on until last autumn, when she became completely bedridden, diagnosed as being in a vegetative state. By this summer, doctors said her organs were failing rapidly and she might not survive a year. A year meant next summer, and now it was already late autumn. Thinking of this, Ye Huili felt a sharp pain in her heart. Looking at Ye Wangqing on the hospital bed, she often cursed the unfairness of fate. The Ye family always did good deeds, their ancestors accumulated virtue, and every descendant was upright. Why did such misfortune have to fall on them? After death took her beloved brother and sister-in-law, it still would not spare her youngest niece. Ye Huili felt miserable, but before entering, she still fixed her makeup in the mirror, afraid the old man would notice. The Ye family now rested entirely on Elder Ye, who was in his 80s. Having suffered the losses of his wife, son, and grandson, she could not let him worry about her too. I'm back, she said, entering the living room. She saw Elder Ye sitting on the sofa wearing glasses and looking over financial reports. Seeing his daughter, he took off his glasses and rubbed his temples. Why are you here on a workday? Ye Huili looked at the helper who understood and went to make tea. Because Zhao Zichen said that Master saw at a glance that someone in our family was suffering, but he needs to see you in person. I did not dare agree on my own, so Elder Yi shook his head. Haven't we invited enough masters? Which famous master has not seen Wangqing? Unless it is some unknown, hidden expert. Maybe it is just fate. After all, they knew there were not that many hidden experts in the world. Ye Huili thought Elder Ye was rejecting her, but he sighed and added, but I still cannot give up. Since he saw Wangqing's situation at a glance, we might as well invite him. No matter the outcome, we should prepare a generous reward for him. Looking at the wrinkles on Elder Ye's face, Ye Huili's eyes welled with tears. Yeah, Wangqing was Elder Ye's favorite, but when tragedy struck, everyone else could break down except him. He had to hold the family together. They needed someone to keep searching for answers, enduring endless cycles of hope and despair. By now, even the old man dared not hope for a miracle. After sharing a quiet cup of tea with him, Ye Huili finally left. Near the courtyard gate, she paused, staring at the magpies in the sweet osmanthus tree. They say magpies bring good fortune, but when would their miracle arrive? She finally messaged Zhao Zichen to set a time with me. When he asked, I calculated the dates and suggested this Friday evening. After replying to his mother, he curiously asked if the timing really mattered. I told him absolutely, dates and hours dictate everything, just like the ancient almanacs specify for major life events. He sighed, marveling at how complex my line of work seemed. I laughed and told him it is actually quite logical, even scientific. He just shook his head, finding it highly ironic to hear someone like me preach about science. The day flew by. After my afternoon classes, I grabbed my bag and headed out, still pondering that dark, corrupted purple aura I had sensed. Suddenly, Li Hao came running toward me, shouting my name. I stopped and turned. He skidded to a halt, completely out of breath. I studied his face for a second, then held out my hand. "Pay up," I said. He stared blankly as I reminded him that my readings are never free, and his brother was safe now. With mixed emotions, he asked if I was always this confident. I smiled and told him I've never been wrong, but I admitted I wasn't sure he would actually listen, given his ties to Shen Minghui. His brother's escape was his own choice. He quickly claimed they were just casual acquaintances. I shrugged, telling him I didn't care about his social circle, only whether my prediction came true. It did, he admitted. He told me his brother Li Zi had gone out earlier that day. On his way back, the GPS routed him over a massive highway bridge. With the ramp less than 100 meters away, he suddenly remembered Li Hao's warning to avoid bridges at all costs. Since he wasn't in a rush, he decided to take a detour. Just as the driver turned the car around, a deafening crash shook the air. They turned and watched in horror as the bridge snapped in half, collapsing into a heap of rubble. They were utterly stunned. If they hadn't turned back, they would have been right on top of it. They would have been severely injured, if not worse. The driver stared at Li Zi like he was a deity, asking in a shaking voice how he knew. Li Zi, equally shaken, admitted he had no idea, only that his sister had met a master who warned him. The driver, knowing Li Zi's sister, whispered in absolute awe that she must have run into a true immortal. Miraculously, no one was on the bridge, so there were no casualties. Once they calmed down, they rushed back. On the way, Li Zi called his sister, transferring a massive sum of money so she could properly thank me. He wanted to invite me over, but urged her not to force it if I refused, as long as the payment was generous. Li Hao knew her brother wouldn't joke about this. She got my bank details, transferred the funds, and thanked me. She said her parents wanted to host a dinner for me whenever I was free. I told her my schedule was packed this week and suggested next Friday night instead. She eagerly agreed. That Friday, after finishing my classes, I headed out. I told my driver I was visiting a friend and would make my own way home, then slipped into the Zhao family car. Zhao Ziqian looked incredibly nervous, shifting restlessly the entire ride. Cold sweat beaded on his forehead as we neared. Seeing me calmly playing on my phone, he asked if I was worried at all about failing. I replied that this wasn't the only mystery I couldn't solve, so there was no point in stressing. My casual answer caught him off guard. To him, I had always seemed utterly invincible, as if I held the secrets of the universe in my hands. My confidence, bordering on arrogance, made him suspect I was the prodigy of some legendary hidden master. It was his first time hearing me admit to any limitations. I chuckled, reminding him that I am no god, and even gods have their limits. When he eagerly pressed me for an example, I just smiled. I mentioned my return to the Shen family and my decision to accompany him today. He gasped, asking how those were linked. Some secrets must remain hidden, I replied, pocketing my phone. We had arrived, and I stepped out first. I looked up at the building, studying the chaotic aura swirling around it. So this was where his cousin was. He led me inside, having already briefed me on Ye Wangqing's state and his family ties. He explained that his mother and grandfather were waiting, but his father was away on business. We took a private elevator to the VIP floor, where guards stopped us with scanners. He apologized for the security, but I shrugged it off. It was perfectly understandable. Flanked by heavy security, we finally entered the suite. Elder Ye and Ye Huili stood up immediately. Though Zhao Ziqian had warned them I was a college classmate, they still seemed surprised. My youthful appearance caught Ye Huili off guard, and a flicker of surprise flashed in her eyes. She quickly stepped forward to shake my hand, thanking me for coming, while Elder Ye offered a respectful nod. He welcomed me and offered me a seat, but I declined the tea, stating I would leave once I was finished. I studied both of them, pleased to find they were fundamentally good people who valued integrity. My sharp gaze seemed to spark a sudden hope in him. He stepped aside, revealing the quiet figure on the bed, introducing her as his granddaughter. I stepped closer to study the silent, motionless woman. Even emaciated and deathly pale, her stunning bone structure and refined features shone through. Her high nose and thin, bloodless lips gave her a hauntingly beautiful, fragile appearance under the bright medical lights. But I wasn't looking at her physical body. I was watching the thick purple energy swirling around her, heavily choked by a dark, sinister fog. I reached out and caught a wisp of it in my palm. A faint, hidden white thread extended from the fog, pointing into the distance. As I stood in silent contemplation, they watched my strange hand movements with growing anxiety. Zhao Zichen finally blurted out, asking if I saw anything. After a brief pause, I told them I had both good and bad news. They exchanged worried glances, wondering what could possibly qualify as good or bad when she was already on the brink of death. Zhao Zichen eagerly chose the good news. I calmly explained that her condition wasn't a medical anomaly, but the result of a deliberate curse. I promised I could wake her if they gave me a week to prepare. Elder Ye stood up abruptly, asking if I was absolutely certain. I assured him I was. Ye Huili burst into tears of relief, holding her father tightly, temporarily forgetting that someone had maliciously targeted her daughter. As long as she survived, they could deal with the culprit later. Even Zhao Zichen was cheering. Elder Ye smiled, his heart soaring, until he noticed my absolute silence and remembered the impending bad news. Their excitement quickly cooled. Elder Ye quietly asked what the bad news was. I looked at them solemnly, explaining that while I could wake her, her unique destiny meant she wouldn't survive past 30. The room fell into a heavy, suffocating silence. Zhao Zichen panicked, demanding to know what I meant and if there was any way to change her fate. I shook my head, quoting the ancient laws of balance. I explained that her destiny was simply too powerful to exist peacefully in this era or within their family. Seeing they understood, I offered a small comfort, adding that I could potentially buy her a little more time. I told them that even with my help, she would only reach 32 and she was already 25. Elder Ye swayed, nearly collapsing against a table, while Ye Huili stood frozen, too shocked to even help him. Now they truly understood the weight of my words. Saving her was a miracle, but knowing she was still doomed to die young was a cruel reality. Zhao Zichen looked between his mother and grandfather, completely lost. He couldn't decide if waking her was a blessing or a curse. To offer absolute hope only to snatch it away with a death sentence was agonizing. How would they even break the news to her once she opened her eyes? How could they tell her she had so little time left? The only sound in the room was their heavy, ragged breathing as they struggled to process it. Finally, Elder Ye took a deep breath and made his decision. "We must wake her up first," he said. "They had reached a dead end before, yet they found me. Life is unpredictable, and a difficult path doesn't always lead to a dead end. Perhaps a new path would open up." He hoped that time would bring a different solution. I glanced at the quiet girl on the bed and nodded, agreeing that the future was never truly set. Elder Ye looked up, his hope rekindled, and asked what I needed. I told him I would prepare everything myself to avoid any mistakes with the complex rituals. I instructed them to have Zhao Zichen pick me up next Saturday at noon. But as I spoke, both Elder Ye and Ye Huili froze. The old man stared at me, asking if I was the grandchild of Shen Zhengguo. I nodded, explaining that due to an accident, I hadn't grown up with the Shins and had never met him. They exchanged a tense, meaningful look. "I do not know if you are aware, but you and Wang Qing have an arranged childhood marriage." My eyelid twitched. "Do you know about the Shen family?" The whole real versus fake Heir scandal was a massive uproar. Everyone in the circle knows. Or is the Ye family just too powerful to care? Old Master Ye had indeed heard some rumors from the lower circles. I asked him then, "Are you sure the one betrothed to your granddaughter is really me after all Shen Minghui has been living under my identity all these years?" Leaning on his cane, the old man laughed. "Back when we made the promise, your mother was barely pregnant. Your grandparents brought her to visit my wife, and Wang Qing happened to be playing nearby. They agreed that if your mother had a girl, they would be sworn sisters. But if it was a boy, they would be betrothed. The betrothal was for the unborn baby in your mother's womb, so logically it can only be you." Finally, the whole story made sense to me. I glanced at the woman on the hospital bed. No wonder her fate line felt so strange when I read it earlier. It was because she already carried a heavy karmic bond. Since it was getting late, I did not want to linger and said goodbye to the Ye family. Old Master Ye offered to have Zhao Zicheng drive me, but I declined, requesting just a driver. "See you next Saturday." They escorted me to the entrance. Once my car drove off, Ye Huili sent her son home and asked the old man, "Father, why did you bring up the marriage?" Even though she was surprised to hear I was actually a Shen young people today, usually hate these kinds of old-fashioned ancient arrangements. What if Lu Qingye gets offended and refuses to save Wang Qing? Her father had survived a lifetime of storms, so he surely must have considered this. After a night of extreme emotional highs and lows, old Master Ye felt exhausted. He let out a sigh and explained I was giving him a warning. Ye Huili was confused. A warning about what? Ever since old Shen passed away and his widow stopped managing the family, the Shen family had been sliding downhill. It got worse every year. You know, old Shen's only son is a total loser of a man. The Ye and Shen families were old friends, and though they had drifted apart over the last decade, some of the older generation were still around, so old Master Ye kept an eye on them. He continued, I even told Wang Qing once that if she met the Shens in business, she should help if she could. Too bad that under Father Shen's control, they went downhill so fast that we could not even throw them a lifeline. Old Master Ye snorted. Though mentioning this betrothal is a bit absurd, since they brought their biological son back, they should treat him right. But look at what that boy was wearing and using. Was any of it valuable? He was so cold when mentioning the Shens, and he has not even changed his surname back. It is obvious how they treat him. Hearing this, Ye Huili began to look back. But as she recalled, she could not help but chuckle. I actually do not remember what he was wearing. I just remember he was incredibly handsome and elegant. Looking so noble and refined, he definitely does not look like he grew up in some small town. Old Master Ye snapped, "Never say that again." What do you mean by not looking like he grew up in a small town? Can a phoenix not rise from a humble home? Are elite families always full of geniuses? If we trace the Ye family back a few centuries, we were just poor farmers. Who is superior to whom? Ye Huili bowed her head. I have been influenced by the high society circle too much, and I will make sure never to speak like this again. Old Master Ye glanced at her. The outside world calls us the number one family. This title is not just about wealth and power, but our heritage and principles. He did not linger on the lecture and shifted the topic back to my situation. The Shens treat him terribly. Bringing him back must serve some hidden agenda. I heard their kid Shen Minghui is very close to De Yong's daughter. Ye De Yong was the old man's nephew from a branch family, and he had been making a lot of suspicious moves lately. At this, Ye Huili felt a surge of anger. When Wangking was in power, those branch families behaved. Now, with the tiger away, the monkeys think they are kings. She paused. De Yong has an only daughter named Ye Xuan. I heard she has some romantic ties with the Shen's son and could not help but sneer. Just look at the allies. They choose such cheap, trashy people. Old Master Ye nodded. Exactly. The Shens did not know their real son was out there before believing they only had one child to carry on the family name. But that son was bound to a dying Wangking. They did not want to waste him on her, yet dared not offend us. They must have been worried sick until they found out they had another biological son. Talk about a perfect scapegoat. Hearing this, Ye Huili stood up in rage. Who do the Shens think they are, to look down on Wangking? Even if she is sick, they are the ones punching way above their weight. She was furious that the Shens wanted to use their other son to fulfill the pact. Old Master Ye sighed, his face weary. They really are ridiculous. We never even insisted on this marriage. If they wanted out, they could have just said so. We would never force them over some verbal promise. Yet they want to avoid our main family while sneaking around to ally with De Yong. They are even exploiting their own biological son. Talk about greed. Once Wangking is cured, it will be time to deal with these restless schemers. Ye Huili knew her father remained incredibly sharp, so she was not worried at all. She mused, actually, come to think of it, the master really has a deep karmic connection to us. Betrothed before birth, and now after everything he is her savior. If they ever will love, is a matter of fate, and it cannot be forced. Besides, she knew Wangking absolutely detested arranged marriages, and before falling ill, she was highly resistant to it, planning to call off the engagement herself once the Shen family's son came of age. If she had not suddenly collapsed last year, they would have broken it off by now. As for me, I, as a master of metaphysics, had no interest in such mundane affairs. It was a pity, as they seemed a perfect match, but destined to be apart. When I returned to the Shen residence, my biological parents were still sitting in the living room. Seeing me arrive so late, my father looked displeased. The driver said you went to hang out with a classmate. I gave a careless nod. My father frowned. A boy or a girl? You just arrived in the capital. How did you make friends so quickly? Heading toward the stairs? I replied casually, a guy in my class. He snapped, I know you used to live without any rules, but now that you are back with the Shens, you must obey our house rules. Leaning against the stair banister, I looked down at him lazily. Like you said, I am used to it and will not change. I am no young master, and I will not follow your rules. Seeing how stubborn I was, my father's temper flared. Stand up straight. What kind of attitude is that? When your elder is speaking to you, I found it slightly amusing. I had heard before that some parents love to set up arbitrary rules to mold their kids into their ideal image. The moment the kid deviates, they scold them. And when they run out of logical arguments, they play the elder card to suppress the child, morally picking on their attitude and tone. It seems my father is exactly that type. His ideal son is probably weak and easily controlled, just like Shen Minghui. I looked at him with amusement. In this world, except for the law, nothing is absolute. Though we share a blood connection, we have zero familial bond. To each other, we are just strangers, passing by in this short life. I see no reason to follow your rules. My father choked with rage, and my mother quickly poured him some tea. "Why are you so angry? Watch your health, drink some water." She then turned to glare at me. "Qingyan, apologize to your father. How can you talk like that? Manhua has never spoken to us like this since he was a child." My father's face was dark. "No need. It seems we cannot control him anymore. But since you have an outstanding engagement to prevent you from doing something scandalous and embarrassing our family, we might as well arrange your engagement early." My mother's expression softened. "This marriage was actually arranged back when you were still in my womb. Now that you are an adult, we can arrange the engagement first. Their family has a very high status, far superior to ours. It is actually a massive step up for us, so you will not be mistreated." My father flipped through a calendar. "I will visit the Yi family tomorrow to settle this and finalize things early to make you settle down." My mother said softly, "Isn't that too fast? He just came back to us and we haven't even cared for him properly." Fast. How is it fast? My father gave me a cold glance and sneered. "I spent a massive fortune pulling strings to get him into university. Yet he goes out partying late at night and talks back to me. If he stays under this roof, who knows what trouble he will cause. Playing bad cop and good cop, they wanted to settle this in the blink of an eye." Watching their performance, I could not help but find it hilarious. If I could not see through their little act by now, I would have lived my 2 lifetimes in vain. Recalling the pale, beautiful woman I saw in the hospital tonight, I found this situation rather amusing. The powerful head of the Yi family was actually being despised by an ordinary wealthy couple. How ironic. Given the Ye family's status, even if Ye Wangqing died, plenty of men would line up to marry her memorial tablet. Instead of giving this golden opportunity to Shen Minghui, they gave it to me. There had to be a catch. What was the reason I recalled the faint romantic luck showing on Shen Minghui's face? Connecting that with Zhao Zicheng's complaints about the Ye branch family making suspicious moves, I easily put the pieces together. The Shens had designed a greedy plan. They assumed Ye Wangqing was doomed and the branch family would take over, so they wanted Shen Minghui to marry into that branch. But fearing the main family might still have a trump card, they locked in my engagement to Wangqing. This way, no matter who won control of the Yi family, they could not lose. But looking at them, they clearly treated me as a disposable pawn. With a mocking smile, I interrupted their conversation. "I know you have already made your decision, so there is no need to pretend you are consulting me." The living room fell silent. My parents exchanged glances, shocked that I did not even question the engagement and just let them have their way. They had prepared all sorts of arguments, but now none were needed. If there is nothing else, I am going to sleep. I walked toward the stairs and suddenly turned my head. I read a quote recently. Let me share it. "One day of virtue brings rest, while a lifetime of deceit brings constant toil." Quite interesting, isn't it? I chuckled, needing no reply, and headed straight to my room. My parents heard my words but did not quite understand them. They just found me incredibly bizarre. My mother whispered he really was raised in the mountains, nothing like Minghui. The butler, who had slipped out earlier due to the tense atmosphere, stood behind the door and caught exactly what I said when I left. He quietly searched for the quote online. Listening to my mother's sighs and looking at the explanation on his phone screen, his expression turned grave. "One day of virtue brings rest, while a lifetime of deceit brings constant toil," meant that an honest, righteous person lives in peace while their life grows smoother, but those who practice deceit will find all their elaborate schemes end in vain. Did the young master know something? Should he warn my parents? After much hesitation, the butler warmed a glass of milk and came to my room. I was standing by the window. I heard a knock. Without turning, I let the butler step in. He bowed respectfully. "Young master, since you got back late, I warmed some milk for you. It will help you sleep." He placed the glass on the nightstand, holding his tray. The butler looked at me, but I didn't turn or say a word. He lowered his eyes, his expression complicated. "Young master, sleep well. Tomorrow is Saturday, so breakfast is an hour later than usual. If you want to eat with the madame, we can adjust the schedule, or if you want to arrange another time, that works too." He bowed, preparing to leave, when I suddenly asked, "Do you have a son?" The butler froze instantly and stared at me. As the butler, he knew everything about the Shen family, but I had never gossiped since arriving. How did I know? The dark night glass acted like a dusty mirror, reflecting a faint outline of our expressions. Standing in front of the window, I did not even need to look back at him. I could see his reaction clearly in the glass. Seeing his shock, I smiled. "Do not be so tense. I just asked casually, nothing more." The butler quickly composed himself. Forgive me, young master. I was just surprised you learned about my family so quickly. I shook my head. It was not quick at all. In fact, I knew the very first moment I saw you. I nodded toward a nearby bookshelf. Your son is sick, is he not? Look at the third shelf from the left. Take the paper talisman from the box and slide it under his pillow. He will be better within 3 days. He spotted the black leather box immediately. Opening it, he ignored everything else and gripped the triangular talisman in his palm. Having served old Master Shen, he had seen powerful people before and instantly realized my ability. No wonder my presence felt so commanding. No wonder I knew his situation the moment we met. A chill ran down his spine, and any doubts he had before coming upstairs vanished. He bowed even lower this time. Young master, is there anything you need me to do? Not right now, I replied, appreciating how easy it is to talk to smart people. If I need anything, I will find you. The implication was clear. If I did not ask, he did not need to act. The butler nodded in understanding. As he closed the door, he stole one last glance. I was still standing by the window, staring out into the dark. Before sleeping, I habitually performed a divination. Ever since I arrived in this world, I calculated my fortune every single night. Except for one strange result a year ago, my divinations always stayed the same, but tonight was destined to be different. My fingers moved rapidly, tracing the calculations. I suddenly looked up, my eyes flashing with brilliant light. I had already lain down, but now I bolted out of bed, grabbed pen and paper from the cabinet, and began calculating the numbers. By the time I finished the deduction, it was nearly 3 a.m. I exhaled deeply. I felt no exhaustion, only absolute joy. Earlier today, Zhao Zichen asked me, "So there are actually things you cannot solve?" I had answered. Of course. Like returning to the Shen family. He did not understand my meaning, but I did. If I had not returned, I would surely die. Too much wisdom breeds misfortune. Extreme brilliance invites tragedy. Just as Ye Wangqing's destiny was too noble for this world to tolerate my mastery over heavenly secrets and supernatural abilities, meant I was doomed to a short life. In metaphysics, we call this the curse of the 5 sorrows and 3 deficiencies. The 5 harms are being widowed, orphaned, lonely, childless, or disabled. The 3 deficiencies are money, life, and power. I suffer from the worst one, a lack of life. In my past life, I was born into a premier divining family with top cultivation techniques and spatial treasures for medicine. Yet I still could not escape the curse of dying at 25. Honestly, I never expected to survive in another form. The real Shen family son was swapped at birth. The foster parents who took him died in a car crash, leaving a 3-year-old toddler to starve to death alone. When I woke up in this tiny, fragile body, the agonizing emptiness in my stomach almost made me pass out. I managed to scavenge some stale biscuits, then dragged a chair over to climb onto the kitchen counter to boil water. In that empty house, a tiny, pale child was kneeling by the kettle, swallowing down water. When Elder Lu finally got the news and rushed to the city, this was the heartbreaking scene he walked into. Tears filled his old eyes, and he held me tight. He was a master of metaphysics himself. Living in a remote village in the southwest, he settled my foster parents' estate and took me back with him. Widowed, young, and lonely in his old age, he had no idea how to raise a grandson, but he quickly realized I was exceptionally gifted in metaphysics. While others spent decades studying the Book of Changes and other scriptures, I memorized them with a single glance. While others used compasses to slowly decipher feng shui, I could read the landscape from a high vantage point instantly. While others bathed and burned incense to draw talismans only to fail, I could create a masterpiece with a flick of my wrist. Everything Elder Lu knew about metaphysics was completely shattered, but nothing in this world is free. Every extraordinary gift requires an equally heavy price. It is what people call karma. Every effect has its cause. Sure enough, when Elder Lu calculated my destiny, he discovered I would not survive past 20. I was already 15 at the time. Overwhelmed by grief and despair, the old man fell gravely ill. Yet as I brewed his medicine, I comforted him. "What are you afraid of? For a genius like me, 1 year is worth 10 of anyone else's. Even if I only live to 20, I will have lived fuller than someone who reaches 100. Elder Lu asked in a hoarse voice if I had calculated my own fate long ago. I remained silent. He asked why I had not told him sooner so we would have more time to find a solution. I smiled. "Well, you knew I was not your biological grandson. Why did you never tell me?" We looked at each other, stayed quiet for a moment, and then burst out laughing. Elder Lu sighed with a smile. "So you knew that too. Sometimes you really do not seem like a child. What does blood matter? After all these years, you are my real grandson." Indeed, a long time ago I had already uncovered the truth of my origins. If I wanted to return to the Shen family, I had 10,000 ways to do so easily, but I never considered it. Living with Elder Lu in that tiny village was peaceful, and I had accepted my fate. I was not disappointed about my short lifespan. In my past life, even with supreme powers and sacred treasures, I could not escape the heavenly path at 25. This body has limited potential and cannot cultivate, so why struggle? But Elder Lu refused to accept this. He searched through ancient texts, trying to find a way to break my curse, constantly urging me to think of something. When I said there was no solution, he would glare at me. Aren't you a genius? What kind of genius gives up without even trying? Get up and think I do not want to bury you. I am still counting on you to burn incense at my grave. Perhaps his last words touched me. I began searching for a way out. Yet day after day, my divinations showed no hope. Until a year ago, right after high school graduation, I woke up in the dead of night. Guided by intuition, I calculated once more and found a tiny sliver of hope faintly pointing north. The next day, when Elder Lu found out, he immediately packed his bags to take me north. But I stopped him. The sign was weak and lacked a precise location. I do not know how long I will have to search. You are too old, so stay home and wait for my news. I set off alone with my savings. A year later, while at an antique market, I received a call from the Shen family. Is this young master Lu Qingye? There is something you should know. Please, remain calm. Looking up, I saw a thread of golden light rising in the distant sky. Later, I called Elder Lu. The biological parents from the imperial capital had reached out. The Shen certainly had sinister motives, but this journey would be full of twists. Still, my sliver of hope lay with them, so I had to go. Elder Lu was worried and offered to join me in case of trouble, but I refused. Let me figure things out first, then I will bring you over. After settling my affairs, I arrived in the imperial capital a few days later, but upon meeting the Shen family, I was deeply disappointed. They were either foolish or malicious, lacking any virtue or outstanding qualities. I could not comprehend how my hope could possibly lie with them. Yet now, looking at the dense calculations before me, the faces of the Shen parents and their lingering energy flashed through my mind. I remembered Ye Wanqing lying breathless in bed, yet surrounded by that dense, heavy purple aura. Everything suddenly became crystal clear. So that was it. My survival was tied to the Shens, yet not truly with them. They were merely a thread leading me through trials to cross paths with Ye Wanqing. My true lifeline lay with her. Looking back at the last 20 years, I finally realized the subtle setup of fate. The Shen's son was betrothed to the Ye family before birth, but swapped and abandoned. The real child died young, allowing me to wake up in his body. Years later, I returned to find the comatose Ye Wanqing. If any single event had gone differently, everything would have collapsed. Was this all coincidence or destiny? Was it heaven's will, or was an unseen hand pulling the strings? And how exactly would my survival be tied to Ye Wanqing? Countless mysteries rushed at me, leaving me in deep thought for a long moment. I took the paper from the desk, folding it repeatedly until it became a triangle. Holding it between my fingers, I stared at it. Mist rolled in outside, filling the room with a damp haze that blurred my vision. When I released my grip, the folded paper slipped away. It drifted down, catching fire before hitting the floor. In an instant, it turned to a tiny pile of ash on the ground. Well, things have a way of working out. Either way, surviving beats an early grave. Just as Elder Lu said, he was still waiting for me to burn incense at his grave. I smiled, turning back to bed. As I climbed in, I kicked off my slippers, scattering the pile of ash. The next morning was Saturday. The maid came in to clean and paused. Young master, did you leave the window open last night? I mopped the floor thoroughly yesterday, but there's so much dust in the cracks today. She cleaned daily, and we always wore clean slippers inside, so this made no sense. Lounging in the beanbag chair, I looked up at her and smiled warmly. I do not really remember. Perhaps I did. I will be more careful next time. Thank you for your hard work today. My gentle smile completely melted her heart, and she waved her hands. Oh, it is nothing. This is my job. I just want to remind you that it is cold lately. You might catch a cold. If you want fresh air, try to open them during the day. I nodded politely. Thank you, I will remember. She carried the trash bag downstairs, stopping by the living room to collect more waste. Suddenly, a stray breeze blew through the hall. The trash bag in her hand loosened, releasing a tiny, invisible puff of ash into the air. In the living room, Father Shen was talking to Mother Shen when his entire body shuddered and he sneezed violently. Mother Shen stopped talking and touched his forehead with concern. What is wrong? Are you catching a cold, Father? Shen frowned. Maybe. I scheduled a visit with the Yes for tomorrow. Do you think we should bring Qingye along? Mother Shen hesitated. Must he really marry her? What is the deal with Sister San? Is he really our biological son? Father Shen stood up to check his phone for messages. Rising too quickly made his head spin, and he rubbed his temples. I cannot say for sure about the Ye family. We must tie Qingyan to the main branch. That way, if anything goes wrong, we have a backup. I know you prefer Qingyan, and his elegance is exactly what you wanted in a son. But under these circumstances, we can just send him more money to ensure he lives comfortably. What do you think? Mother Shen sighed and agreed. It was a pity. Although she adored Shen Minghui, a highly praised young master in high society, she always felt he was missing a certain quality, failing to meet her ultimate expectations for a son. It was only when Lu Qingye returned home and sat at their table that she truly realized it. His effortless grace made her understand what Shen Minghui lacked, an innate nobility that flowed deep in his bones, which no amount of nurture could ever replicate. Yet Lu Qingye possessed it naturally. Mother Shen felt a wave of regret. If only he had not been swapped at birth, the Shen family would be so much stronger now, and she would have carried immense pride among her wealthy peers. It felt like she had lost a priceless jewel that she could show off, and she sighed with deep regret. That morning, Father Shen sneezed, which everyone dismissed, but by afternoon he came down with a raging fever. His face was flushed, his head pounded, and he could not even get out of bed. After examining him, the family doctor insisted on a hospital visit to prevent complications. The family rushed Father Shen to the nearest hospital for IV drips, and following medical advice had him stay for a few days of observation. This threw off his scheduled plans. Naturally, his meeting with the Ye family to discuss the marriage alliance fell through. After visiting the hospital with the family, I took a car back. Strolling through the garden, I noticed a beautiful cluster of large, snowy white flowers and stopped a passing servant to ask what they were. The butler looked closely and called the gardener to confirm it was an autumn chrysanthemum named Jintang Yuma. Mr. Shen had specifically requested them. I chuckled silently. He had demanded white chrysanthemums. Even if these were different from funeral ones, they were still white. The butler ignored my sarcastic smile and added, when purchasing, Mr. Shen loved the grand name and ordered it. But once they bloomed white, it felt inappropriate. After all, who in their right mind would plant a massive patch of white chrysanthemums in a home garden? I figured Father Shen wanted to rip them out, but felt too embarrassed since he had hand-picked them. Jintang Yuma. What a name, I said, gently brushing the petals with a knowing smile. Perhaps many things in life are just like choosing these flowers. You judge by the surface and expect a grand outcome, completely blind to the silent bitterness waiting for you down the line. The butler stood quietly with his head down, pretending to hear nothing. Father Shen remained hospitalized for the rest of the week. With Mother Shen staying at his side, the mansion grew quiet. Since my last warning, Shen Minghui kept his distance and caused no further trouble. I enjoyed the peace, spending my free time preparing for Saturday. Meanwhile, Zhao Ziquan was incredibly curious. He followed me everywhere, asking endless questions, even tagging along when I skipped class for the antique market. Are you going to make a massive scene with thunder and lightning? Do we need to rent a venue? Do we need a lightning rod? Also, I see people setting up altars to summon spirits. Do we need one of those giant urns? Should we custom order it? Hearing this, I was speechless. I replied calmly, no lightning rod, but we do need a giant urn. Custom made is best specifically tailored to your height and body. Zhao Ziquan, who was listening intently, heard this to the end, and couldn't help but ask why it had to be based on him. Scanning the stalls nearby, I spotted something promising and walked over, giving him a friendly smile. Because we will put you inside, add some ginger, garlic, and cumin stew you fresh, and send you straight to heaven. The gods get lonely and love a feast like you. What do you think? Terrified, Zhao Ziquan cried. No way, I am tough and taste terrible. The gods won't like it. As we chatted,